Hey everybody, Lysis here, and welcome to my new series Redstone Logic 101, where I will be going over different types of Redstone Logic builds, such as adders, calculators, GPUs, etc. And I will be giving a general, somewhat in-depth explanation of how they work. So this is not a build tutorial series, so I will not be building anything, but it will be a series on the logic of why certain advanced circuits work the way they do. So for this episode, we'll be going over different types of adders and adder logic. So I'll be explaining why these adders work the way they do, what the benefits of some adders are versus others, and why you shouldn't use some adders. So let's get started. So for our first adder, we have the ripple carry adder, also known as an RCA. So this is the most basic noob adder you'll come across in Minecraft. And the reason for that is it has the most basic carry logic. And the difference between the different adders we'll be going over today is going to be carry logic, which is basically how it handles overflow when you're adding numbers. So let's say, for example, we're adding in decimal. We have 15 plus 7. You do 5 plus 7 first, which you get 12. But the 1 from the 12 is actually a carry out, and that's going to be added to the tens place digits. So we have a 1 on the tens place of 15, and we have a 1 from the overflow, and we add those together, getting a 2. So we end up with a 22. So for RCA, basically it does the same thing where we're able to generate a carry by checking whether or not we're overflowing. So in binary, you overflow when you do 1 plus 1, because binary can only have zeros and 1. So if we do 1 plus 1, we output on this red line, which is the carry line. And actually, we should go over this. The orange will be what's called the first half adder. The blue is going to be the second half adder. And the red, like I said before, is the carry line. So when we do 1 plus 1, we get a 1, 0 because you overflow a 1 to the next bit. So we output on this carry line. But if we do a 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1, pretty simple. You output to this line, which is known as sum line, that goes into the next half adder. So on the off chance that we have a carry from a previous bit going, we're able to, if I can get that on, we're able to do what's called propagate. So we have a generate and a propagate. Generate meaning we generated the bit. We generated the carry from the bit that we're talking about. So 1 plus 1. So when we do that, like what we're doing right now, where we do that, this is generated and it's added to whatever the sum is. So therefore, it propagates this way to the next bit. Now, the reason why this is called a ripple carry adder is when it propagates, it actually ripples on the propagate since it's dependent on what the previous bit's carry situation is. So if this is off or this is on, that determines whether or not this torch turns on, and that torch is not going to be synced with this first half adder torch. So that causes the ripple. So if we do an example here, let's do a 3 plus a 5. Actually, I'll get a 5. I'll put a 4 in first, actually. So we have a 7. 3 plus 4 is 7. And then I'm going to get an input over on here, and then we'll just see what happens when I turn that on. And when I turn that one on, it will become 3 plus 5. Let's get some redstone. And we'll probably need a repeater at some point, so I'm just going to just grab a repeater. Let's put it right there. It doesn't matter where I put it. So let's look at the lamps below when I turn this on. So what happened is basically they're turned off one by one, and this turned on last, so it rippled over. So this is why this adder is considered the most noobish basic adder, because of the ripple. And the problem with the ripple is the speed of the adder is dependent on the size of the adder, meaning how many bits there are. And the more adders you add to it, the slower it gets. And also another problem is if you have a weird arrangement of carry, it generates and propagates, you will end up getting some false answers initially until the final answer is given. So it's going to like flicker on, off, which is not good when you're doing logic type of redstone, because logic-based redstone or computer engineering in general likes synced outputs. So that's it for RCA. So let's move on to the next adder. So for our second adder, we have what's called the insta-carry adder, or the ICA. So the first obvious difference you might notice is that this adder uses pistons while the previous one does not. So this one has actual moving mechanical parts, and the piston is actually important for the carry logic itself, since this is why it's known as an insta-carry adder. So one property about pistons is when it's moving a block, so let's say this piston right here retracts. The instant it starts retracting, this block turns into an entity, allowing the redstone to connect to each other. And it takes 1.5 ticks to extend, or for the block to reach its new state, but the movement that it starts is instant, allowing the carry line to connect to each other, hence insta-carry adder. Also, speaking about the carry line connecting, this actually uses a single carry line that's all connected to each other and blocked off using pistons. So if we look at this, there is only one AND gate which is generated by the first half adder, and there is no AND gate by the second half adder. The second half adder is just a single XOR gate. So how are we able to propagate then? So basically the pistons are the propagate, and the propagation is controlled by the XOR of the first half adder. So let's say we input a 1 here. The piston retracts. If we input a 1 plus 1, this torch turns on, but the piston goes back, cutting off the carry again. And we do that, 0 plus 1, and the carry is propagated again. So if this was generating something, it would propagate over to this next bit over here. So we're able to do the propagation from the first half adder without relying on any previous bits generate or propagate. So this way we have the carry in sync, because we're not dependent on any bits before it or after it. It's only dependent on the inputs of the first half adder of that specific bit. So we're able to do it all in sync without having to worry about some sort of ripple like the previous adder, where we have an AND gate on the second half adder that propagates for us. So let's do an equation like before. Let's do 5 plus 3. And we're going to bring a carry out from over here, or a carry in from over here, and we're going to input a 1 that way. And let's get this over. And I'm actually going to use a repeater to hard power that. And I need a lever too. Oh, right click, middle click. There we go. So let's bring this up a little more actually. Sure, why not? Or actually, I'll just make it look clean like that. So we have a lever right here. And when we input this will all change state instantly. So let's watch. Well, not instantly, it will be done in sync actually. So there is no ripple that happens when we turn this on or off. It's all done in sync. And this is because the carry is done instantly using pistons to propagate. Hence, insta-carry adder. So this is our first step into synced adders. And one thing I want to mention is this is a Minecraft specific adder, since there are no piston-like things in real life computer engineering, or at least as far as I know. And I doubt they have instant connecting wires or blocking off such as this, since there's no such thing as truly instant. So yeah, there you go, instant carry adders. So for our third adder, we have what's called carry look everywhere, or CLE. And I also like to call this personally the Dorito adder, since it's a triangle, and why not? Doritos are triangles too, kind of, sometimes. But yes, this adder is what's known as a CLA type of adder, meaning it uses a logic called carry look ahead. And carry look ahead is basically predicting the carry before when it's happening from the first half adder. So basically, the idea that we have over here in the ICA, where you only when you have only one input on, it retracts. So it's dependent on the initial inputs. So this adder does the same, where if you input a 1, for example, it powers this line right here, which turns off these lines of torches. And then when we have 2 together, we are generating. And then we turn off this line right here, which is the equivalent of turning off the torches. And this is the generate. So for the propagate, we're actually using OR for propagation instead of XOR. And we're using AND as generate as usual. So the reason why we have these torch towers here is because the way CLA works is basically looking at every possible combination of generates and propagates that can allow a carry out at a specific bit. So if we get a lever here, we're generating a carry right here, right now. And then we want to propagate, as in turn this torch on, turn this torch off actually. We are actually propagating, allowing this to turn on, so we propagate over here. And then we can do this so on, so forth. So it's propagating upwards, but if the generate is off, this redstone line here turns on, turning off all the torches. So actually, let's get rid of all these now. So this is basically how CLE works. And CLE is Minecraft specific, even though it uses real life logic. And this is because we have instant diodes in the form of slabs. So let's do the 3 plus 5 equation like we did before. And I'll be doing it. Actually, I'll just input from the carry for 3 plus 5. So we're gonna have 3 here, 4 here, and then I'll just get this out pretty far so we're able to see the inputs. Or we can actually do this. We'll probably need a repeater at some point. Luckily, I have one already in my inventory. So I'll just put it right there, I guess. And for here, we don't need to hard power it since it's just powering the block that turns off the torch. So let's get this lever on. And if we look at this, it's going to happen in sync like the ICA did. So let's watch. Oh. So it's all being done in sync. Yeah. So we get an 8 as the output when we do that, and it's all done in sync. So this is the CLE, and years ago it was very popular, but nowadays it's not used as often because it's a much larger adder. And of course, like the ICA is smaller, but people don't use the ICA because people don't like using pistons or moving parts in logic-based redstone. So that's why you don't find pistons pretty often in that kind of redstone. And here we have the CLE, which is the closest we have to, well, not the closest. There are definitely things that are closer, such as PPA, which I'm not going over in this episode. But this is a really efficient representation of CLA in Minecraft that uses diodes, so it's Minecraft specific, even though it uses real life logic. But it's really big, which is why we have this final adder over here, which we'll be going over now. So now we have the carry cancel adder, also known as the CCA, which is the most popular adder that is currently being used today in advanced logic redstone. And the reason why this is the most popular is because it is both compact and doesn't use pistons. So it's more compact than the CLE, and it doesn't use pistons like the ICA, and it's also using carry look ahead logic. But in this situation, instead of propagating, we're canceling using a comparator and subtract mode. And the cancel is done using a NOR gate, while the generate is done using an XNOR gate. So right now we're actually generating, but it's also being canceled at the same time. And if we put a 1 here, we get a sum, and the sum goes through to the second half adder, and we get an output. But if we look up here, both the XNOR and the NOR is turned off, allowing the signal strength to match and not carry out. But if we do 1 plus 1, the XNOR turns back on, meaning we get a generate, but the cancel turns off, meaning we get a lower signal strength, even though a torch from the previous bit is on, because signal dissipates as you go up. So we do 15 minus 13, and we get a 2, and we get a carry out. So another reason why people like this adder is because you can split the adder into multiple adders of smaller bits. So if we actually power a cancel here like this, or actually let's do it with a torch, you're basically splitting the adder up into two 2-bit adders because you're creating a new cancel over here. Or actually not a new cancel, but you're powering the cancel from an external source over here. So basically what happens below it doesn't affect this unless this turns off. And one more feature about this that is really nice is that since it uses a comparator-based carry, a comparator and subtract mode, we can actually create another XOR to match, we can create another comparator and subtract mode to go in sync with this, allowing us to have a 3-tick carry cancel adder, while the other adders we have over here are more than 3 ticks. Actually, I think this CLE might be, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 1 the torches, and 2, 3. This is also a 3-tick, but it's pretty big. But here we are able to get a really compact 3-tick CCA because we're able to combine the carry logic with the second half adder. Since a half adder like this one uses 2 comparator and subtract mode, and we already have a comparator and subtract mode over here. And let's actually go over the equation 3 plus 5 like we usually do with the other ones, just so we can see it in action. So I'm just gonna input a 1 through the carry in over there. And we can soft power that since it's only powering a torch. And let's do this. So you can see that when we input a 1 there, it's all in sync and there's no ripple as it propagates up. Anyway, so that's it for CCA. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Redstone Logic 101. And if you guys want more in-depth tutorials on how to build these different types of adders, make sure to comment down below and give a like and subscribe if you want to see more content in the future like this. And make sure to follow me on my social medias that are going to be linked down below, and maybe come on and watch me on Twitch where I will actually be building some stuff I'll be doing for future Redstone projects. So I'll see you around and hope you guys have a good day.